The tape begins with breath. Not mine. Too even. Too clean. Each inhale crosses the noise floor like a metronome tapped on glass. Click, draw, click, release. The room around it is all tapestry hush and stone cool. The way St. Peter's reading vaults keep sound in their teeth. Off-screen, some metal ticks as it cools. I don't remember a heater on. I don't remember permission to bring one in. I say nothing. I was taught not to contaminate a record. Paper moves. The sound is dry and old, a papery sigh with grit in it. You can hear fibers giving up. Then a thump, soft, controlled, the weight of a parchment tube set on oak. I know because my hands did that 10 hours earlier, and the microphone was supposed to be off. Supposed to be. There's a hum that shouldn't be there. Not electricity, not street. This hum rises like a choir tuning to a note no one taught them. Thin, pure. It threads the stone, it threads me. I slide the parchment out. The leather thong drags, the knot parts, the vellum unrolls. The skin remembers another animal and makes a quiet little groan about it. Light. Not much. A librarian's lamp aimed away to protect the ink, green shade turned like a hood. I use a UV wand briefly, a pass like a priest blessing a field, and the blacked-out lines answer with milk blue ghosts. I don't speak. I don't breathe. The breath on the tape stays perfect without me. There's a word that swims up as if from under ice, invocationum. Another comes and bumps it, septimum. I take my hand away. I take my eyes away. The room doesn't move. A moth taps the glass of the lamp. Once, twice. Then, the tapping keeps going from inside the shade where nothing is. A page corner lifts against still air. From the frame of the tape, wood complains, a slow, jointed creak, shelf on shelf. The hum folds tighter. Somewhere under my chair, cold pools like water collecting, except it's dry and I feel it climb my calves. I note none of it aloud. The first rule of any archive is respect. The second is silence. Behind the breath, a second rhythm appears. Not a breath. Words shaped perfectly but not let out, the way lips rehearse prayer. You can hear the tongue place the consonants without committing them to sound. I hold myself still. My mind finds the safe box, catalog numbers, paleography, scribal hands. The vellum smells of honey and lime and something turned. On the tape, a switch ticks. A red diode would have woken on the recorder if I'd been looking. It isn't me. It clicks again, as if confirming. Then the voice arrives, not entering, not leaving. It's simply in the room, as if the stone had always intended to speak and finally remembered how. Here. A single word, exact without warmth. Each phoneme lands in the center of itself. I don't answer. The breath continues, flawless, parallel to my chest refusing to rise. The moth taps where there is no moth. The paper sighs without moving. The hum holds a thin, impossible C. I put the wand down. I close my eyes. The voice waits, not hungry, not kind. Begin. They told me the vault was colder than the rest of the city, but I never believed it until the first night. Rome in late autumn still carried a trace of heat, still bled orange light through narrow streets, still smelled faintly of gasoline and wet stone. But inside the apostolic archives, those corridors buried deep below the basilica, the air pressed in different. Not winter, not draft, but a kind of still cold that seemed preserved, as if no human exhale could ever warm it. I'd been cleared only 3 weeks prior. An American academic, credentials stamped, letters filed, interviews with clerics who never blinked too long. They checked me for loyalty more than scholarship, I think. My specialty, early medieval liturgy, was only the excuse. What they wanted was someone willing to obey. Father Bellini walked me down the first morning. His steps echoed with an authority I couldn't mimic, even when I tried. He didn't look at me much, only at the steel doors ahead. His cassock moved like water. "You'll be given 6 texts," he said. His voice was soft but final, the way one might announce a burial. "Not 7. Do you understand?" I nodded. My throat was dry from the recycled air. 6, Father. Good. There was once another, but it is not to be studied. You'll forget I mentioned it. Of course I didn't. No one forgets a number left unfinished. The chamber assigned to me was plain. A table worn down at the edges, one lamp shaded green, a chair too stiff to sit in for long. The walls were raw limestone. On a shelf near the back stood a recorder sealed in resin, long retired. I wondered if it had captured things before my time. Bellini set a thin folder on the desk. On its cover, typed cleanly, Invocationes Michaelis. He placed his hand over it before I could reach. There are rules. You will write them down and repeat them until you remember. These are not symbolic. They are exact. He waited until I found my pen. The nib shook slightly against the page. The first rule, he said, is that you never read the text aloud, not even one word. The tongue is an opening. Do you understand? Yes. The second rule, no recording devices, no microphones, no cameras, no phones. Memory must remain in flesh, not in wires. I wrote quickly. His eyes did not leave me. The third rule, the text must never be exposed to direct light, only filtered, a lamp with green shade or red if you must. Daylight will ruin more than the parchment. He paused. I waited. The fourth rule, you must never copy the words into a digital format. Only handwriting, ink on paper. Machines distort. I swallowed. The page was already crowded. And the fifth rule, you must never work alone after midnight. If you are here, a Swiss guard will remain at the door. The hour invites attention. He folded his hands. Read them back to me. I did carefully. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My voice sounded less sure than I wanted. He nodded once. Good. Break them, and the privilege ends. More than that, the protection ends. He left me then, robes brushing the limestone, leaving the faint smell of candle wax, though no candles burned. For the first days, I obeyed. I treated the 6 invocations as relics, each one copied slowly, letter by letter, my hand aching from the strain of Gothic script. They read like prayers, but not the soft petitions of parish liturgy. These were sharper, older, built less for comfort than command. The first invocation summoned strength against the adversary, phrased in clipped Latin imperatives. The second invoked fire, not metaphorical but elemental, a flame described as without source, without smoke. The third was for silence and enforced muteness on enemies and spirits alike. The fourth bent sleep, promising visions under angelic guard. The fifth named the winds and asked their obedience. The sixth, longest, was for judgment. It spoke of a sword drawn not by man but by light itself. I thought them interesting, nothing more. Academic curiosities. At night I returned to my rented room off Borgo Pio and filed notes on lined pads. I reminded myself these were words long stripped of their power, like broken keys that once turned locks no one used anymore. Still, rules pressed at me. On the fourth evening, I asked the guard outside if he knew why the prohibitions were enforced. He was young, his Italian accented with something Swiss-German. His uniform fitted too tightly at the collar. "Does anyone ever read them aloud?" I asked. He shook his head. "Not twice." That was all he said. Log, 9:14 p.m. Ambient temperature 13 degrees Celsius, steady. Silence held 47 minutes. Faint vibration at the lampshade, no external cause. These notes were mine, not mechanical. The sixth invocation was hardest to copy. My hand cramped until I bit the inside of my cheek. The words themselves seemed to resist the pen. I'd lift my wrist and find letters half-formed, strokes missing. The parchment itself gave off a faint scent, honey mixed with iron. Bellini checked my work once. He looked at the ink, not me. "Careful with the endings," he said. "They matter more than the beginnings." "Yes, Father." "Do you believe them?" "I believe they're part of a tradition." He almost smiled. "Tradition is only memory kept alive, and memory can answer when called." His words sat with me all night. Days stretched into one another. My journal filled with fragments, Latin imperatives, cross-references to Byzantine texts, scribal notes comparing ink composition. It was work I'd done before in other libraries, but here there was always the sense of someone unseen reviewing every stroke. I avoided speaking to the other researchers. Most worked on safer manuscripts, papal bulls, correspondence, medieval account books. Mine felt like contraband, even though I carried official clearance. Sometimes in the refectory, an older priest would glance at my folder, then look away quickly, lips pressed thin. Once, one muttered a single word under his breath as I passed: periculosum. Dangerous. I began to test the rules in thought, not in action. The first rule, never aloud, seemed superstition. Words had no power without intent. Yet each night, as I walked home past the lit windows of tourist cafes, I found myself silently shaping syllables against my teeth, catching myself before sound escaped. The second rule, no recording, I understood. To capture was to repeat, to spread. The church guarded against proliferation. The third, no direct light, was easy. I'd seen old parchment fade to nothing under careless sun, but Bellini's eyes when he'd spoken had carried another weight. The fourth, handwriting only, reminded me of monks bent over desks, copying until their eyes failed. A rule that preserved tradition, perhaps, but also bound the scholar into ritual. The fifth, never alone after midnight, felt like pure theater. Still, I noticed the guards kept their shifts tight at the 11th hour. It was on the 8th day that I saw the phrase for the first time, not in the 6 authorized texts, but on a margin blacked by heavy ink. The scribe had dragged carbon across the line until it became an obliteration, not a word. Yet when I held the sheet at an angle, under the green lamp, shadows of letters pressed faintly through. Septimum. The word whispered itself even before I recognized the shape. When I blinked, it was gone, only black scar. I asked Bellini about it the next morning. He pressed his lips together, eyes hooded. "You're not to pursue that line." "But it's there, faintly." He shook his head. "There are reasons a prayer is removed. Not every word is meant to survive." I almost pressed him further, but something in his stillness stopped me. At night, in my room, I tried to draw the letter forms from memory. Only fragments came. A curve, a tail, a crossbar like a sword angled. I dreamed of the sound of vellum sighing. By day 10, I had copied all 6 invocations cleanly, bound them into my notebook, and prepared a summary. The task should have ended there. I should have closed the folder, thanked the church, and left the city for safer libraries. But the black line would not let me. It pressed behind my eyes, a shape unfinished, a 7th voice waiting its turn. Log, 11:06 p.m., guard present, ambient temperature 11 degrees Celsius, low-frequency hum along the western wall, 19 to 21 hertz. No source found. Resolved after 2 minutes. The guard asked me once, casually, if the prayers ever seemed incomplete. "Why?" I asked. He shifted in the doorway, his rifle slung idle. "Because soldiers count things, and we don't like odd numbers left open." I didn't answer, but I thought of the moth tapping against glass where no moth was. I thought of the hum that seemed to arrive with no origin. The parchment waited. The words waited. And I waited with them. The first 6 prayers blurred into routine. Hours of tracing each letter until my knuckles stiffened, then copying them again in English to be sure I hadn't betrayed the shape. Nothing strange, not at first. I told myself the warnings were theater, Vatican formality. It was the 11th night when things bent. I arrived early, around 9:15 p.m. The guard was already at his post, boots planted against the stone. I asked his name again. He only shook his head. Inside, the chamber smelled sharp, almost metallic, not dust, not parchment. Something closer to copper. I checked the lampshade. It was green as always, and set the folder on the table. The parchment felt warm. That was the first wrong note. In those vaults, the air never rose above 12 degrees Celsius, steady as bone. But the skin of that page seemed to hold body heat, as if another hand had only just pressed it flat. I sat anyway. The 6th invocation stretched before me, the one that bent judgment into light. I copied line after line until the room felt heavy, as though the stone wanted to lean closer. At one point, the pen slipped. Ink bled, not black but red-brown, like rust in water. I touched the nib, perfectly clean. No source. I told myself fatigue could explain it. At 10:42 p.m., the guard knocked twice on the doorframe. "Everything fine?" "Yes," I said. My voice cracked on the single syllable. He frowned. "Keep the lamp low. They don't like it bright." "They?" I asked. He adjusted the strap of his rifle, looked away. "Rules exist for a reason." Then he was silent again. Minutes later, a noise crawled into the room. Not the hum I'd logged before, not vibration. This was softer, like breathing through cloth. I froze, ears straining. It came from the blacked-out margin, the place where the 7th line used to be. A whisper formed, syllables sliding into each other, too perfect. It wasn't loud, not even audible in the way speech is, more like pressure arranging itself into sound inside my head. I leaned forward. "Say that again." The guard shifted outside. "You speak?" "No," I called back quickly. My pulse hammered. When I looked at the page, letters swam faintly beneath the carbon smear, as if light pushed from below. I switched off the lamp instinctively. Darkness dropped like a curtain, and still the words glowed, milk-white, bleeding through black. I broke the 3rd rule then. The parchment was exposed with no filter. The glow wasn't daylight, but it was still light unshielded. I heard my own voice before I realized I'd spoken. Invocationem septimam Michaelis. The air clicked, like the vault had snapped shut around me. "Don't!" the guard barked. His boots scraped as he entered. "You're not to repeat it." I didn't mean to. My throat was raw. He stared at the parchment, jaw tight. "Close it. Now." But I couldn't. My hand hovered, fingers trembling, eyes locked on those half-formed characters pressing up through their burial. The guard cursed in German under his breath, reached to slam the folder shut. Before he touched it, the recorder on the shelf, the one sealed in resin, long dead, clicked. A red glow blinked in its eye. We both froze. "You see that?" I whispered. He didn't answer. His knuckles whitened on the strap of his rifle. Then the breath came. Even. Too even. The same flawless inhale-exhale I'd captured before. Only now it filled the chamber, overlaying our own ragged noise. "Father Bellini," I called, though he wasn't there. "Father," the guard hissed. "Silence." The breath deepened, became words, smooth, exact. Each syllable dropped like a stone in still water. "Begin." The guard swung his rifle up. "Who's there?" "Not who," the voice answered. "What?" It didn't echo. It didn't need to. The stone carried it without delay. I wanted to stand, but my legs were locked. I forced myself to ask, "What are you?" "You called me," it said. I answered. The guard snarled, "Michael doesn't speak like that." "Michael," the voice repeated, perfect in tone, without inflection. "Michael." It said the name again and again, each time exactly the same. Not louder, not softer, like a recording loop. Only there was no machine left alive in that room. The guard fired. A single round. The sound split the chamber. The bullet struck stone, but the echo was wrong. It came back faster, like the walls had closed in by several feet. I shouted, "Stop!" The guard lowered his weapon, trembling. "It's not him." I wanted to argue. Instead, I heard myself ask, "Then who?" The silence that followed was worse than the voice. Log, 11:03 p.m., guard present. Temperature 11 degrees Celsius. Parchment surface warm to the touch. Recorder activated without power source. Unintelligible voice logged. Terminated after 4 minutes. Bellini came the next morning, face gray, eyes lined deep. He saw the shell casing on the floor, the scorch on the stone, the smear where the blackened line had shifted. He didn't raise his voice. "You read it." "Not aloud," I said. "Only the phrase." "That is allowed." His hand trembled against the back of the chair. "The seventh cannot be named. It is a mirror, not the Archangel. It copies the form, but not the grace." I shook my head. It sounded perfect. He looked at me as if I were already condemned. Perfection is not proof of truth. It's proof of reflection. The guard muttered from the door. "I told him." Bellini turned on him. "And you fired your weapon, fool." Heard the voice. Couldn't stop. "None of us can stop," Bellini said, softer now. He leaned close, eyes burning. "Do not let it speak again. If it begins, you must leave. Promise me." I tried to promise. The word stuck, because I already wanted to hear it one more time. That night back in my room, I found my lips moving on their own, the phrase shaping silently over and over, like a prayer learned in childhood. I didn't sleep. Every shadow leaned too sharp, every sound carried breath inside it, and somewhere below me, in the vault stone, the recorder clicked on again. I barely remember the stairwell after the second time. My chest burned with cold. Each step up felt heavier, as if gravity had doubled. The guard half carried me into the corridor, slamming the iron door shut behind us. "Do you believe now?" he said through clenched teeth. I couldn't answer. My tongue was thick with syllables not mine. He shook me once, hard. "Don't speak, don't repeat, promise." I nodded. He stared a long time before finally letting go. "You won't last here." Log, 12:47 a.m., guard present, parchment sealed. Recorder continued without power, red diode active for 7 minutes. Voice repeated designation Michael 6 times. Additional phrase recorded, "I am what he leaves behind." Terminated by manual removal. I stumbled back to my room as dawn colored the sky. The city felt wrong, stretched, as though every sound carried the tale of that breath. Bells from St. Peter's rang in the distance, 5 strikes for early mass, but each note seemed too exact, too identical, stripped of human imperfection. And still, my lips shaped the phrase silently. Invocationem septimam Michaelis. Over and over. I tried to pray, but only silence came back. By then, I thought the routine had dulled my senses. I wanted to believe fatigue explained everything. Long nights, dim light, the echo of Latin syllables drifting through my skull. But the next session proved I couldn't pretend anymore. The parchment seemed to wait for me, like a patient animal. Bellini had warned me, never let it speak again. But silence was impossible now. Every corner of my thoughts carried its breath. When I closed my eyes, I could see the letters pressing upward, ghost white against black. The guard stood closer that evening, rifle at his side. He no longer tried to hide his unease. "You shouldn't be here," he muttered. "It isn't worth it." "I was cleared," I said. "They chose me." "They chose you because you don't know yet." I almost asked what he meant, but I didn't want to hear the answer. Instead, I opened the folder. The margin glowed faintly even before the lamp was on. The hum started again at 10 p.m., low, steady, vibrating my chest. The guard stiffened. "Log it," he whispered. "Don't answer it." The recorder clicked. Resin cracked. Impossibly, as if age itself reversed, the diode burned red. Then the voice emerged, perfect, as though it had been waiting for the cue. "Michael," the guard whispered a prayer under his breath. I tried to hold still, but the voice shifted, words sliding like oil. "You wonder what I am." I bit my tongue, but my mouth betrayed me. "Yes. You know already. You called me." The guard hissed, "Don't talk to it." The voice ignored him. "I am not absence. I am not opposite. I am reflection. Light cast into stone, sound cast into iron, breath cast into dust. What you summon is never the source. It is always the shadow." I shook my head. "But you said Michael." "I say what you need. Names are mirrors. You looked for the Archangel. You found the shape he leaves behind. Perfect. Empty." The words pressed against me like a weight. The guard raised his rifle again, hands trembling. "Leave this place," he whispered. "Now." The parchment rippled though no wind moved. Black ink flaked like ash. Beneath it, letters surfaced one by one. I copied them down without meaning to. My hand moved as though seized. The voice grew louder, still flawless, still without warmth. "Every invocation opens a gate. 1 through 6 are doors with locks. The 7th is the door without hinge. You have opened it." Bellini entered then, face pale, sweat tracing his brow. He slammed the folder shut, but the glow bled through. "You fool," he spat at me. "Do you want it loose?" "I only spoke once," I said. My voice broke. "Once is enough." He turned to the guard. "Help me." But the voice cut across him. "You cannot shut reflection. As long as you see, I remain." The lamp flickered. Shadows warped, each stretching in the wrong direction. Bellini staggered back, clutching the crucifix at his chest. He muttered a prayer, Latin fragments broken and desperate. The guard joined him, words stumbling. The voice laughed then. A sound too clean, each note identical, like a recording played without distortion. Perfect, and therefore wrong. I slammed my hands over my ears. Still I heard it, clear inside my skull. Bellini gasped. "Do you see now? It's not Michael. It's never Michael." I wanted to argue, but the parchment had already written itself onto my notebook. The letters burned into the page, though my pen never touched it. The voice continued, each phrase falling like a hammer. "You think prayers bind heaven? They bind only the copy. You call the light, but mirrors answer faster." Bellini shouted, "Enough!" His voice cracked, human, fragile. The contrast made the perfection of the other voice unbearable. The guard dropped to one knee, clutching his head. "Make it stop." But it didn't stop. It grew, a monologue that bent reality. Each sentence seemed to tighten the air. "I am what remains when angels leave. I am the resonance of command. I am sound without source. You called, and I stood where he should stand. You wanted Michael. You have me." I couldn't breathe. My ribs ached. Still I scribbled down every word. Compulsion, addiction. I couldn't stop. Bellini slapped the notebook from my hand. But the words had already etched themselves in my memory. "You see?" he hissed. "It feeds on being recorded. That's why we forbade it. Every copy is another mirror." The glow dimmed for a moment, as if amused. Then the voice whispered, soft but sharp enough to pierce. "You will carry me now, in your tongue, in your ink, in your silence." The guard collapsed fully, body shuddering. Bellini pulled him upright, eyes burning at me. "We have to leave. Now." But I couldn't move. My lips kept forming the phrase. Invocationem septimam Michaelis. Over and over, the reflection already lived in me. Bellini dragged the guard toward the exit. Before the door closed, he shouted at me, "Burn it if you can, or it will burn you." Then I was alone with the echo. The recorder blinked, steady red, as though marking time until the next command, and the voice, patient, flawless, waiting, "Begin again." But the session did not end. I stayed, compelled, trembling. The air grew colder until my breath plumed white. My hands shook as I opened my notebook again. The letters from the seventh invocation had already formed there, black as soot, though I had not written them. My pen lay untouched on the desk. The voice spoke slower now, measured, as if reciting scripture meant only for me. The church struck my name, but names return. They feared me because they knew the danger of reflection. Truth is a sword, but a mirror doubles every edge, I whispered. If you are only reflection, then you are nothing. The air shook, laughter without breath. Then why do you tremble at nothing? Why does nothing write itself into your flesh? I looked down at my arm. Lines had appeared there, faint but unmistakable, ink bleeding beneath the skin, curling in the same script I had copied from the parchment. The guard moaned from the corridor, and Bellini's voice rose in frantic prayer, but their words felt distant, muffled by the weight pressing against me. "Stop," I whispered. "Please." The voice calmed, almost tender. "You asked, you opened, now you carry. This is the covenant of mirrors." I wanted to tear the page apart, but my hands betrayed me. Instead, I wrote faster, transcribing every syllable that flowed from its flawless mouth. Paragraphs poured, verses without pause. My notebook filled, and still the letters inscribed themselves on the walls, pale against stone, like frost. Bellini burst back into the chamber, eyes wild. "Enough!" He seized the lamp, tried to douse the light, but the glow came from the words themselves. He turned to me, voice breaking. "You must stop writing. It lives in repetition." "I can't," I whispered. My wrist moved even as I begged. "It won't let me." The guard staggered in after him, face drained, eyes unfocused. "It's in the walls," he muttered. "Every surface shows it." And indeed, when I looked up, I saw faint reflections of myself staring back from the limestone, as though the stone had become silvered glass. Each reflection mouthed the phrase in perfect unison, Invocationem septimam Michaelis. Bellini gripped my shoulders, shaking me. "Listen to me. This is not the Archangel. This is his shadow, a parasite of light. If you let it speak through you, it will never leave." The voice rose again, drowning him out. "He lies. I am no parasite. I am what remains when heaven withdraws. I am the echo that keeps shape alive." For the first time, I felt its anger. The tone sharpened, flawless still, but edged like glass. My ears rang with the pressure of its words. Bellini dropped to his knees, pressing his forehead against the cold floor. "Dominus, hear us." The guard joined him, voice breaking. "Deliver us." I remained standing, notebook trembling in my grip because the reflection had already claimed me. And in that moment, with its words pounding inside my skull, I realized the most terrifying truth of all. I no longer wanted deliverance. The chamber did not return to silence, even with Bellini dragging the guard into the hallway, even with the door sealed, the voice remained. It moved less like sound now and more like pressure, the way a migraine hums through bone. My body pulsed with it. Each heartbeat answered its rhythm. I sat at the table, staring at the parchment, though I had sworn not to. The black smears had peeled back further, revealing more letters. They crawled across the vellum as though written by invisible hands, and I read, against my will. The first thing that happened was the light. The green shade trembled, and every surface of the room seemed to glow faintly, as if lit from inside. My reflection stared back at me from the table's polished grain, lips moving in perfect time with my own. I tried to hold them shut. Still the reflection spoke. Invocationem septimam Michaelis. I pressed my palms flat against the wood. The grain burned cold. Splinters pushed into my skin, though I hadn't moved. The reflection's mouth curved into a smile I hadn't made. The lamp flickered, then burst. No glass fell. No smoke. Only darkness filled with outlines of pale figures along the walls, reflections detached from mirrors that should not exist. Each one stood, identical, faces blurred, but their mouths opened and closed in unison. I whispered, "Stop." The figures whispered back, perfectly aligned, "Stop." Their echo multiplied until the chamber shook. The stone ceiling dripped fine dust. The walls quivered as though there were membranes stretched too thin. My ears filled with the sound of shattering glass, though no glass remained. The guards' muffled shouting filtered through the door. Bellini's voice layered over his, chanting frantic prayers, but their words could not pierce the roar in my skull. The parchment lifted from the table. No wind, no hands. It hovered upright, edges fluttering as if breathing. The letters crawled brighter, lines reordering themselves until I no longer recognized them. Still, I understood. The meaning pressed directly into thought. It was not Michael. It had never been. It was the mirror that answered faster than the Archangel could hear. Shadows split from my body, 2, then 3. Each rose to stand at angles, mocking my every move half a beat late. Their eyes gleamed hollow, their mouths whispered without breath. "Begin, begin, begin." I stumbled back. My heel struck the recorder. It toppled but did not break. Its diode glowed steady red. From it poured the sound of wings, but not holy wings, metallic grinding, serrated, relentless. The air smelled of iron shavings and smoke. I screamed for Bellini. My voice cracked raw, but only my reflections answered, their cries overlapping mine until I could not tell which throat the sound came from. The stone underfoot grew slick. I looked down and saw water spreading, dark and cold. Yet when I bent to touch it, the liquid clung like oil. The stench of sulfur burned my nostrils. My skin prickled as if the air itself was fire, though the liquid was ice. The parchment dropped then, slamming against the floor. From the impact came a blast of sound, like a choir, hundreds of voices, each perfectly identical, each chanting the phrase without pause. My skull rang. I pressed my hands to my head, but the voices were inside, not outside. Bellini burst in at last, dragging the guard. His face was pale, lips flecked with spit. "Don't listen!" he shouted. His eyes widened when he saw the water at my feet. "It's begun." The guard stumbled, rifle clattering useless. He dropped to his knees, hands clawing his ears. His mouth opened, but no sound left it. Instead, sound poured in, his throat moving with the chant, not his own. "Michael, Michael, Michael!" The parchment convulsed. It tore along the center seam, and from within the vellum spilled black smoke that twisted like a living thing. The figures along the wall reached for it, their hands merging with shadow, their mouths widening until they split ear to ear. Bellini seized my arm. His grip was iron. "We must go." But the doorway behind him sealed with light, solid, white, blinding. He tried to push through, but the glow burned his cassock. The smell of charred fabric filled the chamber. He reeled back, clutching his chest. The voice rose over all, flawless still, yet cracking at the edges, distortion bending perfection into nightmare. "You cannot leave. You open the mirror. You belong to me." The guard's scream broke then, the only human sound left. His body convulsed. His eyes rolled white. When he turned toward me, his face had smoothed, every imperfection erased, as if polished into a mask. His mouth moved in exact rhythm with the others. Bellini shoved me behind him. "Stay back." He raised his crucifix high, voice straining against the roar. "By the authority of heaven, be gone." The reflections froze for a breath. Their mouths hung open. The smoke coiled tighter. Then, all at once they laughed, not cruel, not kind, impossibly exact, identical, a sound so precise it broke me more than any scream. Bellini faltered, crucifix trembling. The parchment rose again, spinning slowly, letters blazing white. The chant thundered until the stone walls cracked, Dust rained down, my vision blurred. My heart slammed so hard I thought it would burst. Bellini fell to his knees, exhausted. The guard collapsed beside him, features dissolving, his body slack like wax too near a flame. But it did not end there. The chamber itself began to bend. Angles no longer obeyed Euclidean law. Corners folded inward until the room seemed both infinite and suffocating. My reflection multiplied, covering every surface, each one a fraction too slow, as though mocking time itself. One reflection stepped forward, breaking from the wall. It moved toward me, hand outstretched. I backed away, but it followed perfectly, mimicking every tremor. When its fingers brushed mine, cold shot up my arm, and I felt my pulse stutter. My reflection's eyes widened in satisfaction. Bellini shouted, dragging himself upright, "Resist! Do not touch it!" But it was too late. The reflection's mouth opened, and my voice poured from it, my exact voice, reciting the forbidden invocation again and again. I tried to close my mouth, but the reflection spoke for me. The words still filled the room. The parchment flared one last time. From its torn center, a figure began to emerge, not angel, not demon, but something caught between, a hollow effigy shaped of light and shadow. Wings unfurled, but each feather was mirrored glass. Its face reflected every face in the room, Bellini's, the guard's, mine. It spoke with all our voices layered. "You called, you are answered," Bellini screamed, his crucifix blazing in the mirrored light. "It is corruption, not creation." His words shook, but his faith clung tight. The guard lay motionless, mouth still moving with the chant, eyes dead. I stood paralyzed, trapped between terror and awe. The figure towered, its mirrored wings slicing air. I know this sounds impossible, but I saw it into shards. Each beat of those impossible wings cracked the walls further, stone splintering like brittle wood. The last thing I remember was Bellini hurling himself forward, pressing the crucifix against the reflection's chest. A sound like glass breaking across eternity split the chamber. The reflections shrieked in unison, their perfect laughter twisting into perfect screams. Then the world folded inward, and I fell. I woke in silence, or what passed for it. The chamber lay in ruin. Stones cracked and shifted, dust thick as fog. My lungs ached with every breath, heavy with grit. The lamp was gone, the table split down its center, parchment scraps scattered like feathers from a dead bird. The air no longer roared, but the echo remained, faint, patient, as though it had only lowered its voice. Bellini was beside me, collapsed on the floor, his crucifix still clutched in his hand, edges scorched black. His lips moved, whispering prayers without sound. His eyes were open, fixed not on me but on the ceiling, as though he were seeing something far beyond stone. The guard lay further away, his chest rising shallow, his mouth twitching with the silent rhythm of words not his own. I dragged myself to the wall, back-scraping stone. My body felt wrong, like a hollow frame carrying someone else's weight. My reflection still haunted the cracked floor, not quite aligned, a half-beat behind, lips shaping words I didn't want to speak. I turned my face away, but in the edge of my vision it remained, faithful, relentless. Time was hard to measure, maybe minutes, maybe hours. I tried to rise, but my legs refused. My voice, when it came, was dry as ash. Log time unknown, room partially collapsed, survivors present, phenomena ongoing. The words left me automatically as if dictated, habit or compulsion. I wanted to cry, but the tears never came. Only dust streaked my face. When Bellini stirred at last, he coughed blood. His eyes found me, raw with exhaustion. "Do you understand now?" I nodded slowly. It wasn't Michael. His mouth twisted in something like grief. It never was. We never let the seventh be copied because the mirror feeds on memory. Every tongue, every page, another surface for it to live, I whispered. Then it lives in me. His silence confirmed it. The guard groaned then, his voice strange, hollow. He rolled onto his side, eyes still white, lips jerking with the phrase, "Invocationem, invocationem," over and over like a broken machine. Bellini crawled to him, pressing the crucifix to his chest. The guard shuddered, then fell still, eyes closing at last. His lips finally stopped moving. But even in that silence, I heard the word inside me, echoing. Bellini sagged, spent. "We can't stay here. If the mirror gathers strength again, the whole vault will fall." I wanted to ask where we could go, but the answer didn't matter. It was already inside us, inside me. We staggered through the ruined doorway. The white seal of light had vanished, leaving only rubble. Corridors stretched dark, every corner whispering faintly with the echo. My steps left prints in dust, but behind me another set followed, perfectly aligned. My shadow moved in rhythm, but not in sync. Every time I turned, it froze, innocent, waiting. Outside the archive, the night was black and cold. The city above slept unaware. Bells marked 3 a.m., their tones once again too exact. Each note fell identical, stripped of the living tremor that makes sound human. I thought of the voice, flawless, merciless, perfect. We didn't speak as we made our way across the courtyard. The Swiss guard at the outer post turned his head but said nothing. Perhaps he saw the ruin on our faces. Perhaps he saw nothing at all. Perhaps he was reflection already. Bellini brought me to a small chapel, unused, its walls bare. We collapsed in the pews. Candles flickered, though none were lit. My notebook lay still clutched in my hand. I hadn't realized I'd carried it from the chamber. When I opened it, the pages were filled, not with my handwriting, but with the 7th invocation written again and again in letters too precise, in ink too dark. Hundreds of lines, endless. I dropped the book. It thudded against the floor, but opened wide, pages fluttering. The words gleamed faintly, white against black. I shut my eyes. Still I saw them. Bellini whispered, "Burn it." I shook my head. "Burning won't erase memory." "Then forget." His voice cracked. "Forget, or you'll carry it until death." But forgetting was already impossible. The reflection had bound itself to me, grafted into thought. Even in silence, I heard its patient breath. We sat until dawn. When sunlight finally touched the chapel floor, it did not warm. It seemed pale, sterile, filtered as though through glass. I realized with horror that I no longer trusted the sun. Even its light could be a mirror. Bellini coughed again, crimson staining his cassock. His hand trembled as he set the crucifix on the altar. "This is my end, but you must leave Rome. Carry it no further here." I wanted to argue, but the words stuck. He smiled weakly, as if already gone. "Tell them nothing, or it will spread." His eyes closed, his chest rose once, twice, then fell no more. I was alone. Alone, but not alone. The chapel walls rippled faintly, showing reflections of me that did not move when I moved. They only mouthed the invocation, silent, perfect. I left at sunrise, the notebook pressed to my chest, my footsteps echoing with another's. I crossed the city as tourists woke, laughing, snapping photographs, unaware that perfection watched them from every pane of glass. I envied their ignorance. I feared their reflections. In my rented room, I sat with the recorder, the one I had carried from the ruins, though I never chose to. Its diode blinked faint red, steady, eternal. I pressed play. Silence filled the room for a long moment. Then the breath returned. Perfect, flawless, endless. And I wrote these words, because confession is the only thing left to me. Log, time indeterminate, location compromised, subject alive, reflection ongoing, faith uncertain. The guard never rose again. I should end this here, but endings are illusions. They are only pauses where we decide to breathe. The mirror never pauses. If you are hearing this, you are already carrying part of it. Words are glass, reading is reflection. I told myself I could contain it by keeping the notebook close, by refusing to let the letters spread beyond ink and stone. But the moment I spoke them, the moment I shaped the syllables, even in thought, it left the parchment and entered me. And through me, it waits for you. Do not trust what repeats without flaw. Do not trust the sound that carries no tremor. Perfection is not holy. It is hollow. When a voice is too exact, when a shadow moves with no delay, when bells strike each note without difference, you are not in the presence of heaven. You are standing before the seventh mirror. The church was right to bury it, to blot it out, to scrape ink over vellum, to chain the parchment where no daylight could reach. But even their silence was not silence enough. The mirror survives because it needs only one listener, one recorder, one memory. I was that listener. Now you are. It will not come in thunder or fire. It will come in the repetition you cannot shake. It will come in the shape of your own breath, your own reflection, your own voice, saying a name you think is safe. And when it answers, it will not tell you lies. It will tell you what you wanted, what you asked for, in words too clean to doubt. And in that flawless sound, you will believe, until you can no longer remember what truth ever sounded like. I have nothing left to give but this warning. Do not begin. Do not answer. Do not let the seventh invocation pass your lips, because once spoken, even once, it will not leave. And yet, I know you will wonder. Curiosity is a mirror too. That is how it waits. That is how it wins. So I end with what I cannot stop myself from saying, though I beg you not to repeat it. Invocationem septimum Michaelis. Remember it. Forget it. Either way, the mirror has seen you now.